Welcome to our next session, Why Usability Matters for the Future of TV. I'm Nick Newman, and I'm joined, and I'm super excited about this session because creating great experience, I'm kind of a web guy, and creating great experiences really gets me excited. And yet, when you go into a lot of interactive experiences that have been created so far for the television, it just sometimes doesn't always sing. And what we've got today is a great panel, a couple of great speakers who really put the whole idea of audiences and experience right at the heart of what they do. So very excited because we've got a world exclusive for you today. So Josh Atkins from Microsoft Soho Studios is going to show us something that's never been shown in public before, which is all the pieces of Sesame Street and Kids and Kinect coming together in a brilliant user experience. So that's coming up in a moment. But first of all, we're going to hear from Louisa Heinrich, who is somebody I first came across with and worked together with at the BBC a few years ago. And Louisa, I know, is just passionate about this whole subject of making nice, simple experiences and now making from television. So, Louisa.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everybody. OK, so those of you who were around for Tony's talk earlier will have heard this loud and clear from him. We hear a lot of talk in the industry about social TV as one of the big hooks for interaction in the future. But the reality is that TV has always been social. Always was, is now, always will be. And so what I want to talk about is what our responsibility is and some new ways, perhaps new ways of thinking about this stuff. But before I launch into it, I thought I'd explain a bit about my context. So I work in something called service design that not many people have heard of. What is service design? Think about a service that everybody's got. Everybody's got a postal service, pretty much anywhere in the world that you live. And it has lots of different touch points. It has the box on the street that you put things into. It has the little pieces of paper that you put on the things that you put in the box. It's got the counters with the people behind it where you go when you need to send a box. It's got people who come to your house and bring you things. And somehow, we all sort of magically know which bits of the service we need to engage with to get done what we need to get done, right? But the magic happens behind the scenes, where nobody thinks about it, nobody has to engage with it at all. Nobody that I know in their right minds, well, OK, and even some of them in their wrong minds, think about the sorting machines or the trucks and buses and logistics or the magical elves or whatever it is that gets things from point A to point B. We don't have to think about it, because as long as it gets here, it works. And that's a well-designed service, a service where people can do what they need to do without having to engage with all the complexity of what makes it work. And that's what we try to do in the digital world. So that's a bit about me. Over the years, I and Fjord together have learned a few things about TV. And the most important thing that we've learned is that TV is inherently social. This is an actual shot of the street in Berlin during the World Cup. So I've divided this into the stages of watching something, watching television. Before, during, and after. It's all very simple and straightforward. But beforehand, how do we know what we're going to watch? Well, we heard it from Tony. We've heard it from loads of people over the years. We hear from other people. We hear what they like. We hear what they saw last week. We hear what they're going to watch tonight. And this is how we decide what we're going to watch. And one of the great things about hearing from other people is that you hear unexpected things. You don't only hear about things that people think you're going to like. People will talk about whatever they like. It's one of the magic things about humans. And we can learn some important lessons from this. The first lesson is that smarter is not always better. To have a robot that tells me, that feeds me content that it thinks I'm going to like on a daily basis makes my world smaller and smaller and smaller. It converges on a point. There's nothing new or exciting about it anymore. And what we need to do is allow people to be inspired by each other, by content, by the whole broadcast industry. And the other side of that is that it's not always about me. What I watch when I'm by myself is different than what I watch when I'm with a bunch of friends. What people watch when they're on their own is different to what they watch when they're with their partners or with their kids. And one of the things that drives me mad about some of the recommendations engines in the world, I'm not even going to reference the old TiVo story, is that it doesn't let me decide what I want you to base recommendations on. It just keeps on pushing things at me. Anybody who's ever bought something for their dad on iTunes knows about this. It's a mess. Finally, what's really important is enabling people to help one another discover things and be inspired. Establishing connections between people or leveraging existing connections between people is one of the things that we can do in the television world to enrich the experience, to facilitate what people already do. This isn't about changing the way that people engage, it's about enabling them to do what they already do in a better, easier, more fun way. So, moving along to the during watching experience. There's an apocryphal story about how when Channel 4 in the UK first aired the first Lord of the Rings movie, some significant percentage of the people who watched it already owned it on DVD. Why would you do that? You do it because somewhere in the back of your head you know you're not the only one watching. Even though it's got commercials, even though you could watch it without commercials in the privacy of your own home, you watch it while other people are watching it because inherently we're social creatures. We like to feel connected to other people. And what that means in our world now is that because we don't do this anymore, we don't sit around in a living room together anymore, except for maybe big football matches, Eurovision, that kind of thing. We time shift. We are in different places when we consume content. So enabling us to have the conversations, the debates, the laugh together that we would normally have if we were in the same room becomes much more challenging. And there's a couple of lessons here as well. This one's super important. Don't make me fight with the remote. Instead of fighting for the remote, it's about fighting against this thing. What I'm starting to see happening in the industry, I'm starting to see all these prototypes of the future of television, etc., and they look insanely complicated, even to me, and I work in this industry. It's super important that we let people say no. We let people turn it off. We let people decide how and when they want to engage and how deeply. Part of being clever is letting people say no. This one is right, the world's first pocket TV. So this is already happening in quite a lot of places, but I think it's important to remember that while it's nice to enable people to take things with them, to pick up where they left off when they get home, to sort of track their behavior and support it, you shouldn't force them to do that either. Fluidity should not be mandated. It should be enabled. Finally, we have after the viewing experience, and after becomes before. This is all part of the cycle, and so much of the buzz around a program is generated after it's over. This is where people continue to live the lives of their characters, and those of you who are old enough to remember this will remember that the entire summer after JR got shot, that was all anybody talked about in America. That was all anybody talked about. And similarly, recently, we've had this, where Lost created this multi-dimensional world for people to engage with, and everybody spent every series break arguing rabidly over what was actually happening, what just happened, what was going to happen. And Lost also did a really good job of capturing this stuff and enabling it across platforms. If you've seen the Twitterverse around Germany's Next Top Model, I'm currently based in Berlin, you know the energy there, the energy is definitely there to be harnessed, but the fact that Lost was the last program that did a really, really awesome job at it just shows how difficult it is to get this right. It's not just a matter of sucking in feeds and then spitting them out again. It is a matter of creating an experience that resonates with people. And so a couple of lessons to learn from this. The biggest one is talk is priceless. It's not cheap. It's the most important thing you have. But very, very importantly is in bold print in the middle, you cannot own the conversation. No one can own a conversation. You can listen to it, you can enable it, you can amplify it, you can hush it, you can censor it, you can do all kinds of things with a conversation. The most important thing to do with a conversation is to have it. And little things mean a lot to people. This is kind of a blanket rule in my world. Very small details, very small interactions, very, very sort of quick and, once you've seen them, obvious things are what move people the most. If you look at like, everything now has a like button on it. 2 years ago, they didn't exist. You have entire startups building up around really small bits of functionality. Miso and GetGlue around what are you watching right now? Foursquare, where are you right now? Twitter, what's going on right now, 140 characters or less. So these really small, very simple interactions mean a great deal to people. It's not about making things more complicated. It's about finding really meaningful points. And so to sum up, wow, I can't believe I'm actually coming in on time. To sum up, yes, it's about the content. Everything about television is about the content. But it's also about the people. And most importantly, it's about connecting the people with the content that they love. That's what we're all here to do. That's the whole point of us. And when we do that, one of the really important things to remember is that this goes around and around. And when it's done well, it builds on itself, right? What happens during the viewing then translates into the discussion after the viewing, which then becomes the drive before the viewing for new people. And the love continues to build and grow and multiply. And that's the kind of positive feedback loop that we're all looking for. And finally, a really complicated slide. That is essentially trying to get a really simple point across. So this up here is probably my favorite bit of it, this idea of designing for love. So love is a long-term relationship. You can have something that makes you go, wow. And after the 28th time you've looked at it, it no longer makes you go, wow. It makes you go, all right, let's get it over with and get on to the next thing. What you really want is this long-term sustained affection and correspondence and conversation. That's what really resonates with people. And in order to make that happen, you have to think about the people. And who people are, their context, is a really complicated thing. It's me and who I am and who my family are and my friends and who I like the best and who I like in which contexts. It's about when and where I am and how far away I am from the thing or the people or the conversation that I want to be having. It's about time and whether it happened just a second ago, whether it's about to happen, whether it happened 2 years ago. It's about all of these different factors. And we need to make an effort to really understand these things so that what we give people is elegant and simple and lovable. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Louisa. A really fantastic overview there, I think, of the things to bear in mind. So simplicity, connection, context, those kind of things. So moving from some, the general principles through to that specific example I promised you earlier. Josh Atkins is executive designer at Soho Productions, which is a part of Microsoft. And he's going to talk about the particular example of working with a great brand of Sesame Street and some great technology to produce great experiences. Josh Atkins.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk about why usability matters for the future of television. And I'm going to start with a really big number, 250 billion. And I was researching online how I wanted to start this presentation, and I came across this stat as an estimate from Nielsen of the total number of hours of television watched in the US last year. And that got me thinking about how many eyes that is looking at a TV, and how much time those eyes spend just watching television. But then it also started a second thought, which is what happens when the TV can watch you back? And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Kinect, this is not a commercial for Kinect, but I'm going to talk about it for just a second. Kinect is a very interesting bit of technology. This is a quick example of what Kinect does. Kinect essentially is a camera that can see in 3D. It knows what's in front of it, who's in front of it, so it can do facial recognition. It knows where in the room they are, and it can hear them, so it does voice recognition. It's very powerful. But that powerful bit of technology doesn't matter if you don't ask interesting questions about how best to use it. So at our studio, we asked 3 questions. What would happen if people, and specifically children, could speak to the TV and the TV could answer? What would happen if the last 25 years of interactive design, so I come from game development, but what would happen if interactive design and usability principles were applied to a TV show? And what would happen if my studio partnered with a great television organization and worked with them to bring something magical to life using Kinect? And that's where we came up with Kinect Sesame Street TV. Now, what I'm about to show you is real. It's not vaporware. It's not smoke and mirrors. This is a real product. It's actually going to ship this fall, and we're very proud of it. So here's a video demonstration. Now, there's audio here if you can get it, turn the audio on. But here's Cookie Monster. Oh, hiya! I learned yesterday from my friends that the Cookie Monster in France is macaroon, which I thought was pretty cool. Cookie Monster, this is a video we shot for Kinect Sesame Street TV, and Cookie, this is Cookie on screen. He's looking for something to eat, and on the right side here are 2 young girls, Hope and Julia. they're in our lab, and you can see they're watching this show. In the bottom right corner is Hope and Julia's actual skeleton. It's what Kinect sees. It's the Kinect feed. And you can see, they can actually see the two of them. They can see their mother sitting on the couch. And Cookie is starting to prompt them. He's telling a little story that he wants to get a snack out of the out of the tree, the letter K tree. And so he's going to turn around to these two girls, and he's going to ask them to jump. And this is such a simple concept. What if a TV show could turn around and ask two little girls to participate and just simply jump? It's a really easy action. So here he goes. He asks them. So watch what happens when they jump. You can see the show actually responds to them jumping. The leaves come up off the bottom, and the actual object falls from the tree. Very, very simple example of how human action can cause interaction from the TV show. And he's looking for a snack. He gets a kazoo. He's not super excited about that idea, but we're reiterating that kazoo happens to start with the letter K. And by getting the kids involved, we actually feel like they're paying attention to the content and they're actually participating with this particular educational concept. The next example I'm going to show you again of actual shipping content. This has never been shown publicly before. Same two lovely little girls in our lab. Here's the count. Now, this is, we joke, is every parent's favorite moment of our show. The count is going to ask these two nice girls to stand up. And this is, I'll show you a concept we came up with to get kids engaged. We bring in a mirror. Again, very simple concept, but the two girls can see themselves on the mirror. You can see as they move, you can see their skeleton data in the corner. And now all of a sudden they're engaged with the product at a level that they probably wouldn't be engaged with in a standard TV show. And they can see themselves, they can move. And what the count's going to do, and why parents love this, is the count's actually going to ask them to stand still while he counts to the number of the day. Now in this particular case, the number of the day is 11. We've joked with parents we could sell packs of 100 or 5,000. But now watch what happens. Okay. The younger girl in the corner, the older girl's very good at this, but the younger girl in the corner, watch what happens. She can't quite keep still. She moves her arms, and Count sees her. And they both turn to their mom because they think it's amazing, right? And they try again, and you know what's going to happen. I can't really telegraph it. She goes at it again, and she moves. So, usability and the future of TV, or usability and what we call two-way TV. Television is a two-way experience. We came up with some rules for this, and how best to interface with the audience. The first rule, because this is television, is participation is actually optional. Everything you've seen up there, those girls, if they wanted to sit on the couch and watch, they can. The show will play out as a normal TV show. If the characters ask them to get involved, they don't want to, that's fine. That was a key thing. This is still TV. It still has a passive experience built into it. To Louisa's point, the next real key thing was be easy to understand right away. Whatever the show asked you to do needed to be very simple and very straightforward. No complicated rules. And then if you did choose to get involved, it needed to be instantly rewarding and fun. You needed to get that immediate feedback that by getting up off the couch and participating, something amazing was actually happening. How do we come to these conclusions? What were our methods? Well, we kept the concept simple, and actually the whole show is built around the following 7 gestures or movements. There's jumping. Don't need to explain that to anybody. Throwing, waving, clapping, pointing, speaking, and standing still. The popular one with parents. Now, this you could derive as a set of actions that's only important for a show for young children. The fact of the matter, that's not actually true. Those actions are totally applicable for exercise program. They're applicable to a game show. They're applicable to a music program. So it's really about keeping the concept simple and keeping the audience engaged by not asking them to do anything that's super complicated. Experiment. Now, in order, I'll be humble and say, we feel like we're onto something here. We really like our product. We're proud of it. But in order to get to the point where we felt good about it, we had to do a lot of experimentation. And we had to test like crazy. And the main thing is we had over 200 kids come through our studio in the last 11 months trying out different sorts of ways of interacting with TV, how best to prompt them to interact with TV. We came up with one really interesting usability principle, what we call playable storyboards. Now, for those of you, I'm from kind of a quote-unquote interactive background. I'm from game development. With games, prototyping is very relatively inexpensive in comparison to a TV show. But when you actually create a TV show, you have to film, and that is incredibly expensive. So how do you prototype interactive TV? Well, you create playable storyboards. What you see here are actually the first storyboards for the Cookie Monster segment of him asking those two girls to jump. And we created a whole flipbook animation sequence of him coming on screen, him prompting, and we learned a lot of interesting things, right? We learned how many times should he prompt before we decide it's okay to move on. We learned how frequently should those prompts come and how long should the quiet spaces between the prompts last. And it was an incredibly in-depth, long, occasionally painful process, but what we took away from it is a format or a set of tools that we think we can use not just for Kinect Sesame Street TV, but for other projects. So we're also doing a National Geographic project that we've announced, and possibly future projects. This whole new paradigm of creating TV shows that people can just simply stand up and interact with needed a lot of research, and this was one way that we actually kind of came to the conclusions we came to. So why does usability matter for the future of TV? Well, I'll say it's because the future of TV is inherently interactive. It's not just a process of sitting on the couch, putting your feet up, and watching your favorite show. I still believe you'll be able to do that. I like doing that. But at the same time, there's absolutely no reason why the show doesn't ask you to get involved, and right then and there you have the option to do so. And that is why I believe the future of television is interactivity, and usability is absolutely required for it.
Brilliant. Absolutely fascinating, and some great examples of really simple user experience, but behind the scenes there, just an enormous amount of technical complexity, which you managed to hide from people. So, I mean, fantastic examples. So we've got about 10 minutes for questions, so I'd be really interested to hear. I'm just going to kick off with one question. What intrigued me was, Josh, just on the sort of levels of participation. How far can it go between, is it going to be 90% passive, 10% participating, or with a great brand like Sesame Street, are you hoping for, 80% participation and 20% passive?
I think in general we're going to be happy with any kind of participation. So we didn't put an actual metric on what we consider to be success. The important thing is that there's lots of layers of participation. What I showed you in those two quick videos is just kind of scratching the surface of what you can do. If you go online, you can see footage of something we demonstrated at CES, but we created an augmented reality sequence where we convert the living room into Elmo's world. And that is just a whole new kind of interaction and a whole new kind of participation, because all of a sudden what the couch the kid's sitting on looks like this sea shore that Elmo's visiting. So I think there's a lot of different kinds of participation, and sometimes sitting on the couch and just watching is okay. There's no real requirement there that they stand up.
So we don't really quite know yet. We're going to find out as we test different types of content broadly.
Yeah, I would say that, but I would also say if kids just want to sit and watch, we don't consider that a bad thing either.
Great, let's take some questions. So I have one out here. I don't know if we can get the mics, so just wait for the mic to arrive. One's around here, so yeah, lady in the white top.
Hi. The concept of sort of, at least maybe you call it passive interactivity with preschool shows, like the call and answer, has been a real component of most modern preschool shows, most notably Dora the Explorer, where, she'll say,
Picture.
Yeah, what do you think, kids, and expect them to yell back, that kind of thing. So it's kind of almost something that comes naturally to preschoolers in the audience that we were watching Sesame Street. I mean, how do you think this is going to be applicable to an older group of kids and even adults? I mean, because what you've shown is, it's amazing, but it's also a very simple call and response kind of interaction that's going on. How do you make it more challenging for kids who are older? Or how are you going to do that?
That's a great question. That's actually something so our studio is tasked with kind of blending TV and more traditional game approaches. And we have a segment of every episode of Kinect Sesame Street TV that actually is find the hidden objects sequence, where there are hidden objects kind of buried into the linear content, similar to kind of the reference you were making with Dora, I guess. But you can picture and take a photo of that hidden content. We found, interestingly, that tests super well with older kids. So I think it's a mixture of finding the right, knowing your audience and finding the right kind of content and the right kind of experiences to get them involved. With adults, I think it depends on the context of what you're building. So a game show, you could be doing the same exact things almost, but the game show could be a completely different motivator for an adult to get up and participate.
Okay, let's take some more questions. So we've got one more there, and then we'll go to the front.
Hi. Hello. What? Hi. You mixed in your game live filming, correct? In what we've
Yes.
seen, it's not real-time graphics being produced. It's also some real-time.
So the two demonstrations you saw were shot on a set with the performers who play Cookie Monster, the performer who plays the Count. So we filmed on a set, but then to your point, whenever the child interacts, this is where we kind of bring up more traditional game development.
So you put the interactive layer. So my question is, how do you work with the traditional broadcast or broadcast content players? How do you design together with them? How did it happen? Like, how did it work?
So the way it works, so to give great credit where credit is due, Sesame Workshop is an incredible organization. I mean, there's a reason they've been on the air for 43 years. They know what they're doing, and they have a great interactive wing. The way it worked for us, working with them, is we would come up with kind of a general concept of what we wanted to do in the segment, and then we would work with them to come up with the narrative. We would work with them to come up how that segment would be shot and filmed, who would, everything from how it would be directed, who the performers would be. So it's very much these kinds of experiences, I think, are hopefully a future collaborative process between people that have an interactive background and people that have a linear media background.
One of the things that interested me is you were talking about using storyboards and sketching, which is very much coming from a web background, the way in which you create these complex things. I'm just wondering, sort of, Louisa, are you seeing a lot of that? Do you think this is about web and web kind of usability or game usability coming into television, or is it got to be created and invented in its own way here?
I'm always a little bit leery of trying to transfer things lock stock from one platform to another. I don't think it works like that. I think that the way I would see it is that we're running into the same problems in the interactive television world that you and I ran into back in the early days of trying to figure out how to design for existing internet or digital platforms, and it's just that perhaps the problem of context and what people want is a bit more complex now that the technology has moved along, but the techniques sound to me to be exactly the same. Watch people, see how they respond to things, prototype, that's what storyboards are, prototype and test. And
Usability, get the stakeholders in to watch, all that kind of stuff is incredibly powerful as a way of getting that common language, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we have one down at the front.
Thanks, that looks awesome. My children will be all over that. How are the episodes being delivered? How often? Is it like a weekly thing, or is it a box product, or how does that sort of thing?
Another very good question.
Public
has to have a cagey answer.
The way
I would describe that is just think of it like TV. So however TV would be delivered, that's how we'll deliver this.
In episodes. So in
however
you have schedules and you
it's
he's not giving much away.
Fantastically
Okay, come on, fire some more questions. Who would like to ask a question? Yeah, so there's one over there.
For Louisa. I would like to challenge you a little bit on this kind of separation between the way you think coming from the content perspective, or the broadcasting perspective, or coming from the web perspective. Indeed, there used to be separate worlds, and we have different methodologies as designers to tackle the different type of issues. I mean, web was about usage, it was about tools, it was about putting content in a semi-static kind of manner. And broadcasting is clearly about experiences. So when we talk about the storyboards or this type of methodologies that are coming from the broadcasting world, I think they have to be at the very core of the design process in order to be able to grab this kind of experience values into what we do as web in the web space, in the digital space. I don't know if you I mean, as an agency, as Fjord, you are taking some of this kind of approach, kind of experience-driven design into account in terms of methodology?
I'm not sure I was saying that things should be kept separate. Quite the contrary. I'm resistant to the idea that, well, we figured out how to do it over here, and so now we're going to pick all that stuff up and move it over here and put it down again. That doesn't work, and I think that's the wrong way to go about it. But it is about I'm not necessarily a massive fan of convergence thinking. I don't think everything turns into one big soup. But at the same time, I think there's a lot to be learned when we look at our experiences across different platforms and designing for different platforms, context, experiences. I think everything's about experience. It's just that inherently, the experience of interacting with one of those is different from the experience of interacting with something you hold in your hand. And it's about understanding the differences in experience and using whatever tools and methods enable you to do that.
It's in many ways in organizations, it's about breaking down those silos, isn't it?
Yes.
And the other thing which has struck me, and there was a video, I think, over on the other stage earlier, where somebody was just talking about, do tell the people developing all these new experiences to keep it simple and keep it usable. This was a member of the public on video, which really struck me. And just Josh, just to sort of finish, maybe a thought from both of you. How do you do that? How do you keep it simple? How do you make sure that it's not over-engineered?
I think that games, the history of games, at one point was very simple. And over time, we've let it get more and more complicated. So for me personally, it's just thinking back to how I felt when I was young and wanting to do something fun but not have to learn too much.
The kids stuff must be helpful. It must keep
it is. I think it's about going back to the roots of kind of early interactive work and thinking about why was that fun, even though it was a very straightforward, not overly complicated method of interacting and playing with a product.
Yeah. Louisa?
Similar. I think it's about looking past the what to the why. Why do I want to do this? Why do I need to do this? Why do you, broadcaster, want me to do this? As soon as you understand the why underneath, you can start to find the unique moments. And I think if you focus on moments, that's what enables you to keep things more simple instead of trying to do everything at once.
Brilliant. I've learned a huge amount and been wowed as well. So thank you very much to our speakers, Louisa Heinrich from Fjord and Josh Atkins from Microsoft Studios. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you.